I'm Grace. 36. No baby, no promotion, no ring, just a quiet birthday I wanted to feel seen. So I booked a table for 6, my partner, my parents, 2 friends, and me. One by one they texted. Something came up. At 7:22, I sat alone. 6 glasses of wine, 5 empty chairs. Then she walked in. Played a trumpet so soft the whole room held its breath and said my name. She didn't come to rescue me. She came to witness me. That night I stopped waiting to be chosen. And finally chose myself. I didn't book the reservation to prove anything, not to make a statement, not to guilt anyone into showing up. I did it because for once I wanted my birthday to feel like something other than a passing notification on someone else's phone. I'm 36. A not quite round number. No big life milestone to tie it to. No promotion, no engagement, no baby on the way. Just another year logged. But this one felt different. Or maybe I did. For weeks I'd had this nagging ache like I was slowly disappearing inside my own life. I'd be in a room and feel like the lamp or the chair had more presence than I did. I wanted one night, just one, where I was seen not as someone's girlfriend or someone's daughter or someone's backup plan. Just Grace. So I made the reservation. Lyon. Friday at 7 p.m. A cozy French place tucked between a florist and a tailor on 3rd. Brick walls, warm lighting, jazz from a real record player. I chose it because it felt intentional, not trendy. And I booked a table for 6. 6 felt right. Me, my partner Caleb, my best friend Maya, my coworker Lena, and my parents. That was it. Not a crowd, not a spectacle, just the people who in theory should have been there. The people I'd shown up for 100 times before. I sent the invite in our family group chat 2 weeks in advance. Lyon this Friday night. 7 p.m. My treat. Would love to celebrate with you. I followed up with Caleb separately. He was in the kitchen scrolling through work emails on his phone, half listening as usual. It's this Friday, I said, the reservation. Remember? He nodded, still typing. Yeah. Sounds good. No eye contact. No smile. That had become our language lately, transactional warmth. I wasn't sure when affection became background noise, but now it only showed up when I brought it with me. I pinged Maya too. She sent a voice memo full of static and chaos, her dog barking in the background. Oh me, yes, girl, I'm putting it in my calendar right now. Don't let me flake, Lena reacted to the message with a heart emoji. That was her way, short, efficient, vaguely noncommittal. And my parents. My mom replied, we'll see honey. Depends on dad's knee and the weather. But happy early birthday, just in case I read that one twice, then closed the thread before the hollow feeling could bloom. Still, I told myself it would be fine. They were busy. I understood. I always understood. By Friday afternoon, I had everything planned. I left work early. Closed the laptop, let client emails pile up, and let myself breathe. I got a fresh haircut, not dramatic, just enough to look like I cared. I wore my navy wrap dress, the one that made my collarbones look intentional. A swipe of lipstick. Tiny gold hoops. Perfume Caleb used to notice before he stopped commenting altogether. I didn't eat lunch because I wanted to enjoy the duck confit I'd already decided on. That's how far in advance I'd fantasized about this night. When I walked into Lyon at 6:50, the hostess greeted me with a smile that lingered a second too long. The kind of look you give someone you're trying to read. 6 seats for one. She didn't ask. She just led me to the table. It was tucked near the back, white linen, 6 wine glasses, tiny candle in the middle already lit. Beautiful, intimate, empty. This okay? She asked, already placing a menu in front of me. It's perfect, I said, forcing a small smile. I sat at what I imagined would have been the head of the table. Someone had to sit there, and I didn't want to feel like a guest at my own dinner. The restaurant buzzed softly, couples murmuring, silverware clinking, the low swell of Coltrane drifting from the overhead speakers. I checked my phone. 6:56. Too early to panic. Maya was notoriously late. Lena probably caught in traffic. My parents moved slow these days. Caleb might have stopped for wine or flowers or number. That wasn't Caleb anymore. He did everything just enough not to feel guilty. That was his superpower. Still, I kept watching the entrance. Every time the door opened, I looked up with hope, then looked down just as quickly. I sipped water, rearranged the silverware, rechecked my texts even though no new messages had come in. I told myself not to spiral, they'll come. I adjusted the napkin on my lap and tried not to feel the weight of 5 empty chairs around me. One at a time, I thought. They'd start trickling in. They had to. I had reserved a table for 6. I believed, maybe foolishly, that at least one would show. But the first ping on my phone wasn't an arrival. It was the beginning of the unraveling. At 7:08, the first text came in. Maya, I'm so sorry, babe. Total emergency. My mom had to be taken to urgent care. Nothing life-threatening, but I can't leave her right now. Can I take you to brunch Sunday? Happy birthday. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Maya always meant well but lived inside chaos. I knew that. She once forgot her sister's wedding, RSVP. Still, something in me loosened. Not relief, more like the first thread pulled from a fraying sweater. I didn't reply. Not because I was mad, but because I didn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret. I placed my phone face down beside the water glass. A minute later it buzzed again. Lena, deadline hell, client just dumped 3 revisions on me. Video call later, you look amazing, I'm sure. Eat the cake. I'll be there next time. I imagined her typing that with one hand while managing 3 Slack threads and ignoring the fact that she hadn't checked in all week. Lena and I had shared 1,000 after-hours vent sessions. She knew how much this dinner meant. Still no word from Caleb. The door opened and I looked up with reflexive hope, then looked back down. Not him. A man in a gray coat walked in laughing with someone on the phone. I picked up my phone again, checked the time, 7:13. Then a new message lit up the screen. This one from my mother. Mom. Hi honey. Your dad's knee is acting up again and we didn't want to sit too long. Let's do something next week. Happy birthday. Love you. I could hear her voice in the message, sweet, apologetic, distant. My mom had a gift for wrapping disappointment in velvet. She was always offering next week like a second-hand promise. I read it again, then closed the thread and pushed my phone farther away. The water glass was empty. I had poured and sipped and poured again without realizing it. I looked at the 5 untouched glasses around me, still perfectly arranged, glinting softly under the candlelight. They looked like symbols in a ritual I no longer believed in. I checked Caleb's chat. Scene 6:47 p.m. No reply. No explanation. No voice note. Not even the decency of a placeholder lie. I wasn't even surprised, and that was the part that stung. The waiter approached quietly, sensing something in my stillness. Would you like to wait a little longer, or shall I bring the wine list? I inhaled slowly, then nodded. Red, please. House is fine. He gave a small, courteous nod and walked away. A couple behind me laughed. Bright, unfiltered laughter. I flinched. At another table, someone was opening a birthday card, the paper crackling under soft light. I watched them and tried to remember the last time someone had planned something for me without my asking. The door opened again. I didn't bother to look up this time. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to read it, but I did. Caleb. Typing. Then nothing. Then typing again. At 7:22 the message arrived. Hey. Something came up. Raincheck, happy B-Day. No punctuation. No name. No apology. It didn't feel like a cancellation, it felt like erasure. I read it once, then again. The second time it didn't sting less, it stung clearer. I lowered the phone and sat back in my chair. A chair meant for celebration. A chair that now cradled only absence. The waiter returned with the wine. He paused, searching my face for a cue. I'll go ahead and order, I said. My voice didn't tremble. The duck confit, please. And the chocolate torte for dessert. Would you like a candle with that? I smiled faintly. Just one. He nodded and left again. I took the wine and poured my glass full, then almost by instinct filled the others too. I wasn't sure why. Maybe to pretend the table was full. Maybe to remind myself how many places I had set and how many had been left vacant. I raised my glass, not high, just enough. To people who always have something better to do, I whispered. The wine was warm and dry and clung to my throat like regret. I looked around at the table, the white linen, the polished silver, the glasses now wet with condensation. Everything ready, everything waiting. For no one. And for the first time all evening I didn't bother looking at the door again. They weren't coming, they had all just canceled. The food arrived quietly as if the waiter understood there was no celebration to announce. He placed the duck confit in front of me with gentle precision, offered another polite smile, and didn't say a word. I appreciated that. Words at that point would have been too loud. I picked up my fork like I was performing something, like I was still the hostess of a party that hadn't started yet. I took a bite. It was perfect. Crisp skin, tender meat, the rosemary potatoes arranged just so. I barely tasted it. I chewed mechanically. Swallowed. Sipped the wine. And again. Across from me 5 wine glasses stood filled untouched. 5 chairs perfectly spaced, perfectly empty. I forced myself not to glance at the entrance again. It was pointless. The people I had invited had all spoken in their silence. And I, still hoping for a twist in the third act, was left with linen candlelight and the hollow ache of being stood up in slow motion. I took another bite. Then paused. Saturday back. Was I being dramatic? That was the question that rose first. Louder than the music. Louder than the clinking of plates around me. Was I just too sensitive, too expectant, too needy? Maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe everyone truly was just busy. Maybe I should have picked another day. Maybe I should have sent a reminder this morning. Maybe I should have accepted that not every birthday needs a table or candles or company. Or maybe I didn't want to let myself believe it that I wasn't worth rearranging a schedule for. I stared at the empty chair beside me. That was Caleb's seat. I could still picture him sitting there, phone on the table, checking notifications between courses. He wouldn't have said much, but at least he would have looked like someone who tried. Then again, even when he was present lately, I still felt alone. His body arrived. His heart, his eyes, his attention, they were always somewhere else. I poured more wine. My glass was half full. Or half empty. I didn't want to decide. I looked at the napkin I'd folded and refolded throughout the night. I smoothed it across my lap again like I could erase the creases. Then I whispered just under my breath, not for anyone else to hear, I tried. I'd tried to make space, to give people time, to remind them gently, to not be too much, not ask too much, not need too much. And still no one came. I flagged the waiter again. He approached softly, still wearing that unreadable expression. The one between sympathy and service. Can I add the chocolate torte now? I asked. My voice cracked on the last word almost imperceptibly. Of course, he said. Would you like a candle with it? I hesitated. Then nodded. Yes. Just one. He gave a small nod and walked away. Just one candle. One single flickering wick to mark the fact that I was here. Still breathing. Still hoping for something I couldn't name. I folded my hands in my lap again. Around me the restaurant moved on. Tables turned over. New guests arrived. Plates were cleared, bottles uncorked. A couple at the table near mine toasted something, an engagement, maybe, or a raise. They laughed, leaned close, brushed shoulders. They didn't notice me. And why would they? I looked at the 5 empty chairs once more. Not as furniture, but as proof. I had invited people to sit beside me in joy and acknowledgement and memory, and they had declined. Not rudely, not with malice, just absently. Soft betrayals wrapped in polite apologies. The kind of absence that doesn't break a heart but erodes it. Quietly, persistently. The waiter returned with the dessert. A small round torte, glossy and dark, placed on a white plate with a single candle standing at the center. He lit it with a match and stepped back, offering a gentle smile. Happy birthday, he said. I nodded. Not smiling. Not crying. Just nodding. The candle flickered in front of me, its flame small and uncertain. Like it too wasn't sure if it belonged. I stared at it for a long moment. No wishes. No song. No applause. Just a table meant for 6 holding one woman and a question she couldn't shake. Am I worth remembering? That was the real question beneath the others. Not why didn't they come, but would they have noticed if I hadn't invited them at all? I leaned forward, elbows on the table, chin resting in my hand, and let the weight of the night settle. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't tragic. It was just lonely. And something about that, the ordinariness of it, hurt even more. The candle had almost burned halfway down when the first note split the air. It wasn't from the speakers overhead. The jazz playlist had long faded into background noise, lost beneath clinking glasses and soft murmurs. No, this sound was alive. Real. Raw in a way nothing else that night had been. A trumpet. Low, deliberate, and aching. I turned in my seat instinctively, the candlelight flickering across my cheek. She stood near the small platform by the bar, no spotlight, no announcement, no band, just her. A woman around my age, maybe younger. Cropped black jacket, hair pulled into a low knot, trumpet held to her lips like it was an extension of breath. The room didn't go quiet all at once. But slowly, note by note, table by table, conversations paused. Forks hovered above plates. Even the waitstaff slowed their steps. The music didn't ask for silence, it created it. She wasn't performing. Not in the way musicians usually do. There was no flourish, no smile for the audience, no invitation for applause. She played like the notes were a confession, something pulled from the marrow and poured into the brass. It wasn't a happy tune, it wound slowly through minor chords, brushing against sorrow without drowning in it. The kind of melody that lets you ache without apology. I couldn't look away. She played like the room wasn't full. Like she wasn't afraid to be heard by strangers. Like she had something to say that couldn't wait for a better moment. And then, just as gently as it began, the music faded into stillness. She lowered the trumpet and stepped closer to the microphone. Her voice, when it came, was smooth and quiet, but cut through the silence like the sharp edge of truth. "This one's for Grace Hartley," she said. "Happy birthday." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It took me a full second to process what I'd heard. And even then it didn't register like sound usually does. It hit somewhere deeper. Somewhere behind my ribs. My name. Not just a vague "to the birthday girl" or "to someone special," my full name. Spoken aloud. Intentionally. Without hesitation. I looked around the restaurant in stunned disbelief. No one else had my name. No one else had a candle on their table. Every eye in the room was either on her or on me. A few people clapped, uncertain, polite. The woman didn't acknowledge them. She didn't bow or offer a thank you. She simply stepped down from the riser, trumpet still in hand, and began walking toward me. I sat frozen. She moved with quiet purpose, weaving between tables with the ease of someone who belonged anywhere. Her coat moved softly behind her, and her eyes, steady, unreadable, never left mine. When she reached my table, she glanced briefly at the 5 empty chairs, then looked back at me. "Room for one more?" she asked, nodding toward the seat across from mine. My throat tightened. I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Then finally I nodded. Slowly, unsure. She placed her trumpet case on the chair beside her, pulled the seat out, and sat as though she'd always meant to. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It felt like the kind of quiet 2 people fall into when something real has already been said. I leaned in, voice low. "How did you know my name?" She didn't answer right away. Just studied me for a breath longer. Then calmly she said, "Let's just say, someone thought you deserved a proper birthday." I blinked. Confusion curled around my ribs. She wasn't smiling. But she wasn't cold either. Her presence wasn't invasive, it was grounding. As if she had shown up not to rescue me but to witness me. And somehow that was more powerful. I glanced down at my plate, then back at her. "Do you work here?" I asked. She shook her head lightly. "Number. And I'm not on the menu." That made me laugh. Soft, unsteady. She leaned back, relaxed. For the first time in hours, I didn't feel like I was being looked at with pity. She hadn't asked about the empty seats. She didn't comment on the candle or the wine or the ghostly shape of what should have been a celebration. She just sat. I searched her face. Something about her was familiar, but not in a way I could name. Maybe it was the way she held silence. Maybe it was that she wasn't trying to fill it with pleasantries. "What's your name?" I asked. She offered her hand across the table. "Evelyn." I took it. "Grace." "I know," she said gently. Then released my hand and let the stillness settle once more. Whoever she was, whatever this was, she had said my name out loud. Not just into the room, into me. And after a night of absence, that alone felt like a miracle. Evelyn didn't rush to speak. She just sat, settling into the empty seat across from me like it belonged to her all along. And somehow it did. Her trumpet case rested on the chair beside her, one hand draped gently over it like it was something fragile. She didn't fidget. She didn't check her phone. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just existed there across from me, fully present in a way that felt unfamiliar and comforting at the same time. I watched her for a moment longer, unsure if I should say something or simply let the quiet do what the conversation hadn't. Then finally I asked, "Do you do this often? Serenade strangers in restaurants?" She tilted her head, a soft smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Only the important ones." I gave a half laugh, dry and surprised. "Important?" I echoed. "I'm sitting alone at a table for 6 with wine glasses full of ghosts. If this is important, I'd hate to see what you call forgettable." She looked at the glasses, then back at me. "You showed up. They didn't. That says something." Her words landed softer than they should have. Not as an accusation, but as an observation. And it lingered, echoing longer than the trumpet's last note. "You didn't have to play for me," I said. "I didn't," she replied. "I played for the silence around you." I stared at her. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not my friends, not my family. Certainly not Caleb. Evelyn's gaze didn't flinch. She wasn't trying to impress me. She wasn't asking for anything. She was simply stating what she saw. And for the first time all night, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself. "You always crash people's birthdays?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She shrugged. "Only when someone forgets to celebrate them." The waiter returned, pausing with a flicker of confusion at the unexpected addition to my party. "Would your guest like a menu?" he asked. "She'll have whatever she wants," I said, not looking away from Evelyn. She gave a polite nod to the waiter, then turned her water glass in her hand slowly like it was something worth studying. There was a stillness about her, not rigid or awkward, more like she had made peace with quiet a long time ago and trusted it to carry the weight of things. I leaned in slightly. "So, Evelyn," I began. "Are you just passing through?" She nodded. "Always. Mostly jazz gigs. Studio work. Private events when I can stomach the dress code. I travel light. I move often." I took that in. It made sense. She had that look, rootless but not lost. Like someone who knew how to belong nowhere and still make every space feel intentional. "Where were you before here?" "Montreal. Before that, Austin." I bounced between noise and stillness depending on the season. I sipped my wine. "And tonight was stillness." She smiled. "Number. Tonight was noise. You just didn't recognize it because it was quiet." I blinked. "That's poetic. Or pretentious," she said with a wink. "Depends on the lighting." Another small laugh slipped from me. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my body until that moment when something in me unclenched. She hadn't asked what I did. She hadn't brought up the 5 chairs between us. She hadn't tried to fix the mood or distract me with stories of herself. She simply allowed the moment to be what it was. That somehow made her feel more honest than anyone else I knew. "You know," I said slowly, "you're the first person tonight who actually used my name." She met my eyes again. "Names matter. Especially when no one else remembers them." I looked down. The candle between us flickered slightly as if caught in breath. "Caleb didn't even bother to call," I murmured. "Just a text. 4 words." She didn't ask what the words were. She didn't need to. Her silence said she'd heard them all before in other stories from other tables. The torte was still untouched. The duck mostly cold. But I didn't care anymore. "I thought if I made it nice enough," I said, "if I created the right moment, they'd show up." Evelyn tilted her head. "You created something beautiful, Their absence doesn't make it less so. I stared at her. Something cracked, not with pain but with clarity, like a window finally cleaned after months of fog. She didn't say it to make me feel better. She said it because she believed it. And that in itself felt like a gift. Not pity, not consolation, but recognition. The first I'd received all night. Evelyn swirled the water in her glass slowly, her fingers resting gently against the rim. She hadn't touched the wine, hadn't reached for bread, hadn't even unfolded her napkin. She just sat quiet, present, with no rush to fill the space. Finally, she looked up. So, she asked softly, why didn't anyone come? I flinched at the question, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. It cut through the polite fabric of my own excuses, the ones I'd been stitching together all evening like a blanket I hoped might keep the truth out. I don't know, I said, eyes on my plate. They're probably just busy. Evelyn didn't respond. I cleared my throat. Maya's mom had an emergency. Lena got dumped with client revisions. My parents had a reason, I'm sure. And Caleb. I trailed off. Her gaze didn't press. It just waited. He said something came up. I finished, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. But I'm sure they care. They love me. Evelyn nodded once, not agreeing but acknowledging the words. Love, she said, is not the same as showing up. I looked at her sharply. She didn't flinch. It's easy to say we love someone, she continued. It's harder to be there when it's inconvenient. Love is the headline. Presence is the body of the article. Without that, you're left with a title that promises more than it delivers. I stared down at the tablecloth, tracing the edge of the plate with my fingertip. I didn't ask for much, I whispered. Just one night. Just one dinner. You asked for presence, she said gently. That's never a small ask. Something in my chest tightened. That kind of truth doesn't land loudly, it settles like ash. Silent and undeniable. I took a breath. Then another. I don't think I even realized how lonely I've been, I said. Until I saw all these chairs and knew no one was coming. She looked around the table with me, her eyes soft but unflinching. That's the cruel part, she said. Loneliness doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits quietly beside you until one day you look up and realize it's taken all the other seats. I swallowed hard. There's something humiliating about it, I admitted. Like I set the table too generously. Like I overestimated how much I mattered. You didn't, she said. You hoped. That's different. I blinked. The difference hadn't occurred to me. I had hoped. I had believed that the people in my life would show up when I needed them, not because I demanded it, but because they knew I would do the same for them. I had done the same for them. Caleb's birthday last year, I'd cooked for 10 even though he only invited 4. When Lena had surgery, I drove her to every appointment. When Maya lost her job, I edited her resume line by line. I had shown up. And yet, here I sat. At a table set for 6. With only one seat filled, and even that by someone I hadn't invited, someone who came anyway. Evelyn's presence felt more sincere than all the apologies in my phone combined. I looked at her. You didn't have to come, I said. She met my eyes. But I did. I nodded slowly, and I still don't know why. Evelyn smiled faintly. You don't need to know yet. Sometimes it's enough that someone saw you sitting alone and chose to sit too. I exhaled deeply. I think I stopped expecting that. Somewhere along the way. That's the danger, she said. You stop expecting and soon you stop asking. Then one day you stop setting the table. Silence settled between us again, but this time it didn't feel like absence. It felt earned. I studied the glasses again, their delicate stems catching the light. Each one was still full. Still waiting. Evelyn watched me watching them. There's weight in an empty chair, she said. More than most people realize. I nodded. It's not just about who didn't come, I said. It's what their absence says. Or doesn't say. That's why it hurts, she said. Because you didn't just set a table. You made space. And space is sacred. Her words landed like truth wrapped in velvet, soft but impossible to ignore. I felt something shift in me. Not a dramatic revelation. Just a quiet understanding I had been making space for people who never paused to ask if they deserved it. And this woman, this stranger, had taken the seat like it belonged to her. Not with entitlement, but with intention. I looked at her again. "You don't feel like a stranger," I said. She smiled. "That's because I'm not here to be polite." Evelyn reached down beside her trumpet case and pulled out a phone. She didn't hand it to me right away, just held it in both palms like something fragile. Her expression had shifted. Less quiet curiosity, more focus. There was something new in her eyes, something that told me this conversation had only just begun. "Grace," she said gently, "before I show you this, I want you to understand something." I stared at her. "You didn't imagine tonight. You didn't overreact. And you're not crazy for thinking something's been wrong for a while." I didn't speak, couldn't. My chest was already tightening. She turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a photo. Dimly lit, slightly grainy. But unmistakable. Caleb. His arms around another man. Not just a casual hug, not just a friendly lean. His face was tilted into the man's neck. His hands were buried beneath the man's coat like they were trying to disappear inside each other. The man was handsome. Stylish. The kind of polish that Caleb used to admire from afar but never emulate. His name was tagged in the corner of the photo. Julian. My stomach dropped. Evelyn held the phone steady. "This was taken 2 nights ago," she said quietly. "But it's not the first." I blinked rapidly, my breath hitching in my throat. "What is this? Why do you have this?" She placed the phone down on the table between us. "Face up. Evidence now, not just a picture." "I wasn't here by accident," she said. "Lena called me." I looked up sharply. "Lena?" Evelyn nodded. She noticed things. Patterns. Energy shifts. Times. Caleb said one thing but did another. She said you were pulling away from yourself. That your light had gone dull. My vision blurred slightly. "And so what?" She asked. "You to what? Watch him?" "Not me," Evelyn said. "My brother. He's a private investigator. I'm just the distraction." I sat back, eyes wide. My heart was pounding. "Distraction," I echoed. "People don't notice cameras when there's live music," she said. "They don't notice microphones when someone's playing a trumpet in the corner. I come and play a set. He gets what we need." I stared at the screen again. At Caleb's face. At the way he held Julian like he belonged to him. Like I never had. "This can't be real," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was. The knowing had been building for months. In the missed calls. The cold glances. The nights he said he was working late and came home smelling like a cologne I didn't own. "He's been seeing Julian for over 6 months," Evelyn said softly. "They met at a tech event, started as drinks. Turned into weekends." I pressed my hand against my chest. I knew something was off. I thought maybe it was me. Evelyn shook her head. "It's not you. It's never been you." I looked back at her. "And the rest?" I asked. "You said this wasn't just about the photo." Evelyn pulled another device from her coat, a small tablet. She unlocked it, tapped through a few screens, and turned it toward me. There, neatly organized, was a list of wire transfers. All small. All timed on Fridays. Each one pulled from our joint account. I scrolled further. Flight details. A one-way ticket from New York to Milan. Departing next Thursday, passenger name Julian Torres. Second traveler Caleb Owen. I covered my mouth. "You have to be kidding." "He told his company it's a remote sabbatical," Evelyn said, "but he's liquidating funds under your shared savings. He's made the transfers look like utilities and small purchases. But they're all routed into a travel account he shares with Julian." I sat in silence, the weight of it all sinking deeper with every breath. "He was going to leave," I said. Evelyn nodded. "Without telling you? Without a conversation? Without a single confrontation?" I felt something in me harden. A click. A shift. This wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. Caleb hadn't forgotten me. He'd erased me. "He waited until my birthday," I said, voice hollow, "so I'd be distracted. So he could disappear without mess." "He knew you'd be too hurt to see it clearly," Evelyn said. But you deserved better than silence. I couldn't stop staring at the numbers on the screen. The flights, the names, the precision. How long has Lena known? I asked. She suspected for about 2 months. She hired us 6 weeks ago. We didn't want to come to you without real proof. Why not just tell me? Because she said you wouldn't believe her. She said you'd protect him. She said the only way you'd accept the truth was if someone showed up when no one else did. I blinked back the heat in my eyes. So that's what you're doing? Showing up. Evelyn looked straight at me. I'm here because no one else was brave enough to sit in the truth with you. I nodded slowly. My hand drifted toward the photo on the phone again. I studied Caleb's face. It wasn't just affection, it was relief. He looked like a man who had already left. The waiter passed by asking quietly if we needed anything else. I barely heard him. Evelyn didn't break her gaze. You don't have to decide anything tonight, she said. But you deserve to know what was happening behind you while you were facing forward. I looked at the candle between us. It was nearly out. A small flickering dot in a sea of wax. I whispered more to myself than her. He was going to leave me while I was still loving him. Evelyn leaned forward. No, she said. He already did. For a while I couldn't move. I sat there in a chair meant for joy, watching the reality of my life rearrange itself in front of me. Photos. Flight numbers. Account withdrawals. Names I didn't recognize and one name I did, mine attached to everything except the decisions. Caleb hadn't just betrayed me. He had erased me from the ending. This wasn't just a mistake, I said aloud. He planned it. Evelyn didn't nod. She didn't add pity to the silence. She let the truth sit between us like something sacred. I turned the screen toward myself again. Scrolled. Read every detail a second, third, fourth time, part of me still hoping I'd find a mistake. A loophole. Something that told me this was all just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was precise. Quiet. Calculated. The Caleb I'd built a life with, shared a bed with, protected, defended, he'd already left me. This dinner, this table, my birthday, it was simply the last act in a play I didn't realize had ended. I felt the breath catch in my chest. It wasn't grief. Not yet. It was something older, something like shame. I feel stupid, I whispered. Evelyn leaned in. You're not stupid, she said. You were loyal. There's a difference. I looked away. My eyes burned. I thought I was building something. Even when it got quiet between us. Even when he stopped looking at me. I thought it was just a season. That things would come back around. Evelyn's voice was calm. They never circled back. He just kept walking further away. I exhaled shakily. You know what hurts the most, I said. It's not the affair, it's not even the lies. It's that he never gave me a chance to fight for anything. He made every decision without me. She nodded slowly. Because he knew if he looked you in the eye, he'd see you still standing there. My throat tightened. He was planning to be gone by next week. Yes, she said. And you weren't supposed to notice until after. I folded the tablet shut and pushed it gently toward her. I noticed. Evelyn was quiet for a beat. Then she said, almost like a whisper, You didn't set this table for Caleb, Grace. I looked at her. You set it for yourself. And you showed up. Her words didn't hit like a line in a movie. They landed like truth, slow, steady, undeniable. I looked around again. The wine glasses. The candle. The duck I never finished. The chocolate torte with a candle that had burned low. For the first time all night I saw the table differently. Not as a stage of abandonment, but as proof that I had hoped. That I had loved. That I had tried. And that I was still here. I stood up, not abruptly, not in anger. But in a kind of stillness that comes after the storm breaks open. Evelyn rose with me, her expression unreadable. Are you okay? She asked. No, I said, but I will be. I picked up my coat, reached for my phone. Took one last look at the table at the seat across from mine, the one Evelyn had filled without needing permission, and let out a slow breath. Then I looked at her. Thank you. She didn't smile. She just nodded. You deserve better than to be background noise in someone else's story. I stepped out into the cold. The February air hit my cheeks sharp and bracing, but I welcomed it. I didn't cry, I didn't call anyone. I just walked. Down 3rd Street. Past the wine bar. Past the florist. Into the night with the steady rhythm of someone who had decided finally to stop waiting. When I got home, Caleb still wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. I didn't even take off my coat. I walked straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and searched for an old contact. Elena Carr. A divorce attorney I had met years ago through a client. Ruthless. Unsentimental. Fair. I drafted an email hand steady. Subject: urgent legal consultation. I explained everything simply. Attached the evidence Evelyn had sent me via secure file, outlined the shared account. The transfers. The flight. I ended it with the words that mattered most: I'm done waiting. I want to protect what's mine. I hit send. Then I logged into our bank account, froze the withdrawals. Called the 24-hour customer support line to flag suspicious activity. Confirmed with the agent that no funds would be moved without my written consent. It was nearly midnight, still no message from Caleb, not even a check-in, not even a lie. I didn't need one. I grabbed a duffel from the back of the closet, filled it with a few clothes, my hard drives, my documents. I looked around the apartment, the place we'd lived for 4 years. The framed prints we never hung, the shelves we never finished. The bed we hadn't shared meaningfully in months. It wasn't home, not anymore. I left the keys on the counter. And I walked out. The studio apartment above the used bookstore on Eldridge wasn't much. One window. One radiator. One creaky floorboard near the closet that groaned like it had something to say. But it was mine. No shared dresser. No shoes lined up like lies. No silence that pressed against me with judgment. Just a space that didn't expect anything from me. And maybe for the first time in years, that was exactly what I needed. The landlord barely asked questions. I paid 3 months up front and said I needed it furnished enough to think. He nodded once and handed me the keys. It smelled like dust and paper and leftover stories. I bought a second-hand desk from the thrift shop around the corner. Hauled it up the stairs myself, bruised my elbow, and laughed at the absurdity of it. I hadn't lifted anything heavier than resentment in months. By the second morning, I had unpacked the sketchbooks I thought I'd thrown away. I flipped through them like time capsules, old logos, layout concepts, half-finished mood boards from a life I paused for someone else's comfort. Caleb had always said design was a soft skill. Pretty but impractical. He encouraged me to take the project manager role at his firm, said it was stable, adult, sensible. I believed him. I believed that giving up the part of me that made art was part of becoming a partner. A grown-up. But now at this desk, in this strange little studio with a radiator that never stopped clanging, I let myself pick up a pencil again. The lines were shaky at first. Hesitant. Like even my hand had forgotten what freedom felt like. But then something unlocked. One sketch led to another. And then another. I posted a logo concept to an old design forum, not expecting much. Within an hour, someone messaged me, wanted a tweak, asked my rate. 2 days later, I had 3 inquiries. Then 5. The work wasn't glamorous. A bakery logo. A digital flyer for a poetry night. A new brand palette for a therapist who didn't want to look too clinical. But every time I opened a new project file, I felt something stir. I wasn't rebuilding yet. But I was moving. And that was enough. Evelyn didn't visit often. But when she did, she never called ahead, never asked permission. She just knocked twice, leaned her trumpet case against the wall, and held up something warm from the bakery below. Grilled cheese. Or fresh sourdough. Once a paper bag with nothing but jam and 3 silver spoons. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Once she walked in, set down a tin of coffee, and said, "You've got paint on your cheek." I hadn't noticed. I didn't care. She never asked how I was. Never said things like, "You seem better," or "Are you over it yet?" She never treated my recovery like a timeline or my silence like a problem to fix. She just sat. Or leaned against the window frame. Or played 2 or 3 soft notes when the afternoon felt too heavy. The trumpet was always near but rarely used. It was like her not loud unless it had something to say. One night it started to rain. Nothing dramatic. Just a low, steady rhythm against the glass. I was on the floor back against the wall, feet stretched out toward the center of the room. Evelyn was perched on the edge of the windowsill, eyes half closed. "You don't talk much," I said, not accusing, just noticing. She smiled. "Words get crowded sometimes. Music clears them out." I nodded, watching the ceiling. I used to be so afraid of quiet, I admitted. In my apartment with Caleb, it always felt loaded. Like something we weren't saying lived in every room. Evelyn turned her head toward me. "And now?" "Now," I said, "it feels like mine." That answer surprised me. But it was true. In this space, I wasn't being measured. I wasn't failing someone's expectation. I wasn't adjusting myself to fit. I was simply here. Some nights I fell asleep to the sound of the bookstore owner restocking shelves downstairs. Other times I sat at the desk until 2 in the morning working on designs that would never be printed just because I could. And in those hours, those in-between moments, I began to remember how it felt to be seen. Not by clients. Not by strangers online. But by myself. Evelyn brought a sketch pad once. Flipped it open and showed me drawings of places she'd played. A jazz bar in Berlin. A wedding in upstate New York. A rooftop in Mexico City. They weren't perfect. Some were just lines and shadows. But they felt real. "Do you miss any of them?" I asked. She shrugged. "Not really. Places are people. If the people weren't worth staying for, the place never was." That answer stayed with me. Caleb had wanted Milan. He'd sold it like a fresh start. But it had never really been about the place. It was about leaving without having to say goodbye. Evelyn stayed until the rain let up. Then she left without ceremony, as always. Before she closed the door, she turned and looked at me. "You're drawing again." "I am." "You're not invisible anymore." I wasn't. I was just looking at the wrong eyes. She nodded once, then disappeared into the stairwell. I stood at the window and watched her umbrella blur into the streetlight glow. And for the first time in a long time, I felt not full, not finished, but real. It was Evelyn's message that brought me there. Short. Unassuming. Rooftop, 7 p.m. Wear something warm. No explanation. No pressure. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. When someone has already sat with you in your ruin, you stop needing context. You trust the invitation because you trust the one offering it. I arrived just as the sun dipped behind the skyline. The rooftop was strung with soft lights, not enough to make a statement, just enough to remind you that someone had thought about ambiance. Folding chairs, mismatched rugs, a few crates turned into tables. People moved quietly, talking in low tones, holding paper cups of wine or ginger tea. I spotted Evelyn near the corner, standing beside a portable speaker and a simple mic stand. Her trumpet case sat open at her feet. She wore a navy coat, her hair tucked under a gray beanie, eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. She smiled, not wide, not performative. Just enough. I made my way over. She didn't say much. Just squeezed my hand and nodded toward a seat in the front row. I took it. As people settled in, a hush fell over the space. Not forced, not awkward, just natural. Like everyone knew something was about to be offered, and we were all being asked to hold it with care. Evelyn stepped up to the mic. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice low but clear. "I don't usually introduce my songs. But tonight's different." She paused. "This one's called The Sixth Seat." I felt my breath catch. No one else reacted. To them, it was just a title. But I knew. She raised the trumpet to her lips. And played. The first note was not loud, not sharp. It slipped into the space like a breath, tired but certain. The melody rose slowly, not in triumph but in memory. Like someone walking back through the ruins of a house they once lived in, touching the walls, letting the dust speak. It wasn't mournful, it wasn't angry. It was honest. Every note felt like it had traveled a long road to get here. There was a weariness to it. A kind of ache that doesn't beg for sympathy, only acknowledgement. And layered beneath it all, something else. A strength that didn't need to declare itself. A resilience that lived in quiet corners. A woman who set a table for 6 and still sat down alone, candle lit and heart open. I didn't realize I was crying until the second movement began. The melody lifted just slightly. Not like hope, not yet. But like exhale. Like someone unclenching their fists after holding pain too long. The rooftop stayed silent. No one whispered. No one shifted in their seat. Everyone was listening. But I knew I was the only one hearing it in full. Because it was mine. This wasn't a song written for the world. This was a song written from me. For me. Every skipped beat. Every restrained crescendo. Every soft dissonance that didn't resolve it mirrored my nights, my silences, my trying and trying and trying. When the final note came, it didn't end like most songs do. It just stopped. Not abruptly, not gently. It stopped like someone who had said exactly what they needed to say and nothing more. Evelyn lowered her trumpet. No one clapped. Not at first. There was just stillness. Reverence. The kind of pause that doesn't ask for applause because it knows it delivered something sacred. Then quietly, a few hands came together. Not loud, not rushed. Just enough to say we heard. But I didn't move. My hands were in my lap, tears on my cheeks, not from sadness. Not from grief. But from something I couldn't name. Something that tasted like being known. Fully, wordlessly. Evelyn stepped down from the makeshift stage and came to sit beside me. She didn't ask if I liked it. She didn't explain why she wrote it. She didn't need to. We sat there shoulder to shoulder watching the lights shimmer against the evening wind. After a while, I found my voice again. You didn't have to do that, I said. She looked at me. I know. Why did you? Evelyn's answer came without hesitation. Because some stories need to be heard out loud. Even if the person living them never gets a chance to speak. I wiped my cheek. It was beautiful. No, she said, her voice soft. It was true, and for the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt whole. Not fixed, not healed, but whole in the sense that nothing was hidden anymore. Not from her. Not from me. The 6th seat at my table had always been empty. But tonight, it sang. The hostess at Leon looked up from her screen and blinked twice. Name, she asked, though something in her eyes said she already knew. Grace Hartley, I replied, smoothing the cuff of my coat. There was a pause just long enough to feel the spark of recognition light across her face. Not many people remember quiet disasters, but some silences are loud enough to leave an echo. She nodded and tapped the tablet. Table for 2. Right this way. This time, I didn't scan the room for arrivals. I didn't wonder who might come or invent stories to justify why they didn't. This time, I was here for one reason. And she was already on her way. The hostess led me to a small table near the window. Same restaurant, same candles, different light. There were only 2 seats. One for me, one for her. No ghosts. No placeholders. Just presence. I sat down, inhaled the familiar scent of rosemary and garlic, and let myself remember, not in pain but in clarity. A year ago, I had walked into this restaurant believing that setting the table would make people show up. That if I made it beautiful enough, easy enough, they'd have no excuse to stay away. Now I understood. The real power wasn't in the invitation, it was in the choosing. 10 minutes passed. Then I heard it, the soft thump of trumpet case against floor, the rhythm of boots crossing polished wood. I looked up. Evelyn as steady as ever. Same navy coat, same unhurried walk. Same presence that didn't demand attention but always earned it. She reached the table and gave me that same small smile. You're late, I teased gently. I brought a trumpet, she said. That buys me 3 minutes. We both laughed. She took the seat across from me and placed the case beside her, fingers tracing the leather handle as if it had been part of this ritual all along. Risotto, she asked. Always, I said, and the chocolate torte. No candle this time, no need. The waiter arrived, grinned when he recognized me, and said nothing more than, "Glad to see you back." We placed our order, no hesitation, no glances over our shoulders. Evelyn rested her elbows on the table and leaned in slightly. So, she said. Why 6 chairs? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally knew it fully. Because I was trying to fill a silence I didn't want to admit was mine, I said. I thought if I surrounded myself with enough people I'd stop hearing the echo. She nodded. Did it work? No, I said. It made the echo louder. Our wine arrived. This time I didn't fill the other glasses. I didn't toast to absence or apology. I simply lifted mine toward her. To choosing, I said. She clinked her glass to mine. To knowing who deserves a seat. We ate slowly. The risotto was perfect again, earthy, creamy, grounded, but this time I tasted every bite. I wasn't filling a void. I wasn't proving anything. I was sharing a meal. With someone who showed up not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Halfway through dessert, Evelyn looked at me across the flickering candlelight. You've changed, she said softly. I nodded. So have the chairs. She raised an eyebrow. Back then, I continued, I thought a full table meant I was loved. Now I know better. And now, she asked. Now, I said, I set fewer places, but I fill them with people who see me. She leaned back, a satisfied look on her face. I think that's what you were doing all along, she said. You just hadn't cleared the table yet. We sat in silence for a moment. But it wasn't empty. It was shared. Graceful. True, I looked around the room. Nothing had changed. But everything felt different. It wasn't about Leon. It wasn't about Caleb. It wasn't even about Evelyn. It was about me. About choosing to sit with myself long enough to know who belonged beside me. I smiled. I used to think being alone at a table was the worst thing that could happen, I said. And now, she asked. Now I know, I said, that the real tragedy is inviting people who were never hungry for what you had to give. The studio was quiet when I returned. Not empty. Just quiet. I turned on the small lamp by the desk, its amber glow washing across the wood grain. The scent of rain from earlier still lingered in the windowsill, mingling faintly with the scent of cinnamon from the bakery downstairs. Evelyn followed me in. She didn't ask if she could stay. She didn't have to. She placed her trumpet case near the window, leaned her coat over the back of the second chair, and wandered to the shelf where I kept my old sketchbooks. Mind if I, she asked, already pulling one free. I shook my head, smiling faintly. You're the only one who ever asked. She sat on the floor, legs crossed, flipping slowly through the pages. I busied myself boiling water, preparing 2 mismatched mugs of tea. It was a rhythm we had settled into without even noticing. When I turned to hand her the mug, she paused on a page. I knew which one it was before I even saw it. A small pencil drawing, just rough lines and shadows. A table, 1 chair. A single figure sitting, no face, no features. Just posture. Waiting. Not desperate, just ready. Above it, scrawled in slanted handwriting, were the words, "Some seats are meant to stay open until the right person sits down." I hadn't remembered drawing it until I saw it again now. I must have done it one of those early nights in the quiet when I was still aching but didn't know how to bleed out the grief. When I still hoped somewhere deep down that silence meant something was about to speak. Evelyn didn't say anything. She just traced her finger gently along the line of the empty chair. That's not loneliness, she said softly. That's discernment. I sat beside her, tucking one leg beneath me. At the time, it felt like both. We sipped tea in silence, pages fluttering between us like slow breath. Eventually, she leaned her head against the wall. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. Would you ever draw it again? I looked at her. Maybe. But next time the figure wouldn't be waiting. She'd be choosing. Evelyn smiled. That's a different kind of power. I nodded. We didn't talk about where she would sleep. There wasn't a plan. There didn't need to be. She stayed that night not because it was romantic, not because it was expected, but because presence, when offered freely, is never unwelcome. She stayed the way music stays after it's gone. Quiet but felt. The mattress was still on the floor. The studio still small. My life still a draft in progress, but none of that felt lacking anymore. That night I didn't dream of Caleb. I didn't replay the dinner table or the photographs or the departure. I dreamt of a chair. Just one. And a hand reaching across it, not to possess, not to plead, but to be still together. In the morning, the sunlight cut through the blinds in clean lines. Evelyn was still asleep on the window seat, knees tucked up, trumpet case resting at her feet like a sleeping dog. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. And I sketched. Not because I had to deliver something. Not because I was proving anything, but because I had something to say again. By noon, I had a call scheduled with a new client, a small bookstore rebranding after 30 years. They said they chose me because my portfolio felt like someone had lived it. And maybe I had. Maybe that's what came out when you stopped trying to earn a seat and finally started building one. Before she left that day, Evelyn turned at the door, her coat half on. "You look different," she said. "How less like you're waiting for someone. More like you're deciding." I watched her go, the door clicking shut behind her. Later that evening, I opened my sketchbook again. I flipped past the old pages, the 6 chairs, the empty table, the birthday without voices. And I drew something new. One chair. One figure. Hands steady. And the words, "I no longer need a full table to feel whole. I only need the right seat and the right person in it, even if that person is me." I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew this: I would never again wait for someone else to choose me. Because I had already chosen myself. And that chair. It was never really empty. It was mine.